For over 2 decades, China has experienced remarkable growth, building a solid foundation as a global industrial and technological powerhouse. Victory in the trade war against the United States would not just be an economic achievement, it would symbolize a global shift of economic power from the West to the East. The trade war, which began in 2018, was initially intended to slow China's rise as a global economic force. The US took various steps to curb China's success, including imposing high tariffs, targeting Chinese tech firms, and pressuring its allies to reduce trade ties with the country. Yet, despite all this pressure, China's economy under Xi Jinping's leadership has remained resilient. In fact, Beijing has strengthened its domestic market through various initiatives and large-scale projects. China continues to lead innovation in strategic areas such as 5G technology, artificial intelligence, AI, semiconductors, and electric vehicles, outpacing many other countries. So in this video, we'll explore the major changes that could unfold if China truly wins this global trade war. Keep watching. For China, the trade war launched by the US isn't just about tariffs. It's seen as an attempt to block the country's economic and technological resurgence. China believes the US crackdown on trade, the targeting of tech companies like Huawei, and export restrictions on semiconductors are part of a broader strategy to maintain American dominance in the global system. In a 2020 public address, President Xi Jinping stated that China is facing unprecedented changes not seen in a century, urging the nation to become self-reliant in innovation and strengthen domestic supply chains. As a response to US actions, China introduced the dual circulation strategy, a policy aimed at reducing reliance on external markets while boosting the domestic economy. By reinforcing internal demand while selectively maintaining international ties, China aims to shield its economy from external pressures. China also sees itself as a voice for developing nations that have long felt sidelined by the global trading system. Through platforms like BRICS and collaborations with the Global South, China is pushing to create a new economic framework that it views as more balanced and fair. From China's viewpoint, the trade war is a long-term battle to assert its rightful position as a global power, not just an economic dispute. If China emerges victorious, we can expect major shifts in global trade flows. China would solidify its position as the world's primary trade hub, likely replacing the US as the preferred trading partner for many nations. In the past 5 years, the use of the renminbi, RMB, in cross-border transactions rose to 53% by July 2024, up from 40% in July 2021. This trend signals a growing acceptance of the yuan in international trade. Victory in the trade war is also expected to accelerate the expansion of China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, which now includes more than 140 countries. Nations across Southeast Asia, such as Malaysia, Indonesia, and Vietnam, along with several countries in Africa and Latin America, are expected to deepen their trade ties with China. Key infrastructure projects funded by China, including ports and railways, reflect growing global dependence on Chinese investment and trade. With its increasingly dominant trade position, China could not only become the world's main export hub, but also a reference point for global trade policies, replacing the US in several strategic sectors. Despite Washington's aggressive efforts to restrict Chinese giants like Huawei, TikTok, and SMIC through bans and trade limits, China has continued to expand its tech capabilities. In 2024, Huawei reported a 22% revenue surge, reaching 862 billion yuan, nearly matching its all-time high in 2020. This growth came even as Huawei restructured its business model to adapt to US restrictions that cut off access to key technologies like semiconductors. The same trend can be seen in the electric vehicle EV market. Chinese companies now lead globally, surpassing sales of major American and European brands. Last year, over 75% of global EV sales came from Chinese manufacturers like BYD, offering high-tech models at far more affordable prices than US competitors such as Tesla. This technological rise shows not only China's resilience against sanctions, but also its readiness to shape the future of the global digital economy with its own technologies and ecosystems. One of the biggest potential consequences of China winning the trade war is the weakening of the US dollar's role as the world's dominant currency. Since World War II, the dollar has served as the primary global reserve currency and trade medium, giving the US significant geopolitical leverage. But the tide is turning. The renminbi is gaining ground globally thanks to China's strategic push and the West's sanctions on countries like Russia, which have fueled demand for alternative currencies. Some media reports now speculate that the RMB could challenge the dollar's long-standing dominance in global finance. At the same time, Global South countries are increasingly building alternative trade systems that do not rely on the US dollar. For instance, China's Cross-Border Interbank Payment System, CIPS, is now being used for international transactions, reducing reliance on the US-based SWIFT system. The era of unipolar dominance by a single superpower like the United States is coming to an end. We're witnessing the rise of a multipolar world with competing centers of economic and geopolitical power. This shift is already underway, as global influence becomes more distributed among major and middle powers. In this evolving system, players like China, Russia, India, and Japan are playing increasingly crucial roles in shaping global geopolitics. Although the world is moving toward a multipolar framework, international organizations, trade rules, and diplomatic relationships are expected to become more complex. Nations will need to strike a more balanced approach, engaging with multiple powers based on their own strategic interests. For example, ASEAN countries have deepened economic ties with China through the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, while still maintaining relations with the US and Europe. At the same time, Western influence in setting global tech standards, trade regulations, and financial policies is expected to wane. With its growing economic strength, China is now poised to play a larger role in shaping the global future, particularly in areas like artificial intelligence, green energy, and cross-border payment systems. If China wins this trade war, it will mark a dramatic shift across every dimension. It won't just reshape trade and technology, it will transform the entire global power structure. The world is clearly moving toward a more diverse international system, with China emerging as one of the key players. Whether this shift brings greater stability or sparks new tensions will depend on how other nations adapt to the realities of an increasingly multipolar 21st century.